Right, so I've finished both my hexagons now, and I've folded them into the L shapes. So just make sure when you fold them into the L shapes, you've got the front of the stitches facing you. So where the V's on the edge roll towards you, that means that's the front. The back looks slightly different. So yeah, try and make sure you've got the same sides facing you and the right sides. Okay, just while you plan out what you're going to do next. So looking at this, I definitely want to make the back wider than the front because I want to make a bit of a back neck width, and I want to add some edging on at the end, just to the front and around the neck. So for that reason, I want to add on probably 2 rows on each side, if not more. But the beauty of this is you can actually add a few rows, join it up loosely, try it on, and if you want more rows in, you can just undo it and add more. Okay, so I'm going to try putting 2 more rows on either side of the back seam. I've also decided I want it longer, so I'm going to make it quite a lot longer. So I'm going to add the rows that I want for the centre back all the way down and around to the hem, and I'm going to stop there. So I'm going to go down this side and this side just to add on 2 rows. Same on the other side to match it up. And then if I'm happy with the width at the back, I'll then join this seam, and then I'm going to add even more length on at that point. Obviously, I'm going to come back to you at that point and let you know if that was going to be wide enough for me. What I'll do before I go away and try it, I'm going to show you how to make the extra rows without going all the way around the hexagon. So obviously you would have worked out if your sleeve depth is what you want it to be, which mine is. That's when you need to stop adding to every edge, because otherwise your sleeve will just get deeper and deeper. All right, so the first thing we need to do is add onto this bottom edge and this back edge, if you're doing the same as me. So we want it to be right side facing. So I'm going to start in this corner. I'm going to turn it over. Hello, Marvin. Okay, and then I'm just going to zoom in again so you can see what I'm doing a bit more closely. And then I'm going to start in this corner with the next colour in the sequence, which is going to be that pale pink. Right, so I've got my yarn just adding in to this corner. So I'm going to do my stacked single crochet. So chain 1, single crochet, and then single crochet into the vertical V of that stitch. I'm just going to pull that tail slightly, and I'll do another, apologies, I won't do another stitch because as I was just about to tell you, when we're adding on, we don't want to make a cluster in that corner. We just want 1 stitch there. So in a second, I will just finish that end off because I've only trapped it behind those 2 strands, so I don't really want it to come out. But for now, it should hold as I show you what we're going to do next. So we're going to do a standing single crochet, and we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to go as we would into that next space to make our cluster of 3. So what we've created there is just a standing single crochet, stacked single crochet, sorry, and a chain 1 just to make a gap there to work our next row into. Okay, so if we were to do a cluster of 3, it would end up sticking off at an awkward angle. All right, so we're going to do a cluster of 3 and then keep going as we normally would along the row. Oops, only did 2 in that one. Gotta concentrate. So 3 in there, 3 in there, and I'll meet you at the other end where I'll show you what we do once we've gone all the way around the corner to the part where we want to finish. So I'm obviously going down this side and down that side. Okay, so I've come to the other end. I'm just going to do the same thing as I did at the beginning, chain 1, and this time I'm just going into that space with a last double crochet. Okay, and then I'll finish that round, with the last double crochet. I'll finish that round and then I'll join in my next colour. I'm actually going to join it back in up here so it's still facing the right way. All right, so my next colour is yellow. So I'm just going to insert my hook into the top of the stacked single crochet. Okay. And then take my yellow. So I'm going to make the first double crochet, or well, another stacked single crochet into this stacked single crochet, rather than into the gap, just so that the edge is going to line up. And then the other 2 I will make into the chain space. So you only need a cluster of 3 because we're not going round the corner. And you'll see now that can line up along the edge, ready for when we make our edging. Okay, so then we're just doing our usual skip 3 without chaining and going into the next space. And we're going to go all the way around again. Sorry about that barking. Okay, last one of that cluster. So I won't bore you and film the whole stitching all the way around. I'll just let you get on with that now, and we're going to finish it with the 3 at the end. But I will show you that in a second. Right, so I've come to the end of this row now. So I'm in my last gap. I'm going to do 3 double crochet. But the last one of the 3 I am going to put into the top of the last double crochet from the previous round, just to keep that edge lined up nicely. Okay, and then we can finish that off, and then I'm going to keep starting from this end, so I'm keeping all my right sides of my stitches facing the outside. Excuse me. And we're just going to do the same as we did on this row now. So we're going to do a stacked single crochet, a chain 1, cluster of 3, same when you come to the other end. And you're alternating now between starting with a cluster of 3 or starting with the stacked single crochet. So I've been having a look at one I've made before, and I quite like the fit of it, but it was a little bit more snug than I'd like this one to be, because I'm wanting this to be a bit longer in the body and a little bit more loose, a bit baggier. So what I decided to do, the last one I added 4 rows onto both sides. So obviously made 8 rows in between for the back neck. So this time I'm going to put 5 on each side and have a little try of that on, see if I'm happy with the width. So obviously I need to put that on the front, on both sides. Make sure, obviously, when you're adding on to your other half, that you're doing it on the opposite side. So you're working the other way, but with the stitches facing you, okay? And then we'll join up the back seam when we think we've got it the width that we want at the back. If you want to add width but you don't want to add length, obviously, don't go all the way around that corner. Just finish there the same way that I've shown you at these ends, and just go down one side. So yeah, if you want that cropped length but you want the back to be wider, you're obviously only going to add into the back. Okay. so I'm ready to join up my back seams and my sleeve seams now. So I've added on 6 rows in the end because I decided I just wanted it like a little bit roomier around the waist. And of course I will be adding an edging and a neck edge on, so that will bring this a bit closer together at the front when I've finished. Right, so to join up, I prefer to actually crochet things together. So I've actually got it with its right sides facing outwards. So the way that you can tell if it's the right side facing outwards is that the V's on the very edge of your last row will be rolling sort of towards you rather than away. So if you put your cardigan out in front of you the way I have, folded in position with the right sides facing, and we're going to start with the back seam. Okay, so we can make a nice decorative seam using slip stitch crochet, which you've obviously used when you've been joining up your rows. So you'll have a bit of practice at that. Right, okay, so we've got a slip knot first, keeping a long enough tail to sew in. And then we're going to crochet this together on the wrong side, because that's the inside, this is the right side. So we're going to fold this back seam. And what we want to do is match up like for like the stitches on each side, because we know we've got the same number, and it's quite easy to follow because your gap helps to guide you and stop you from misaligning the stitches. So obviously we need to get that first stitch, the first 2 stitches lined up nicely. So I quite like to create a seam that lays nice and flat and looks quite decorative on the outside. So you can either, if you want to do it my way, you're going to take your hook and put it through the front loop of that stitch there and the back loop of its partner on the back there, and then join, doing the same thing in every in the top of every stitch as you go down. If you don't want to do it like that, you can go through both loops like so, but I find that makes a bit more of a bulky seam that won't lay as flat. So it's up to you. You can do it either way. Right, so we've done our slip knot. So we need to, if you're going to do it my way, take the front loop of the first stitch, which in this case is the standing single crochet, and the same on that side. We're going to take the front loop of that standing single crochet as well. So there we go, we've got 2 loops together, and then take your slip knot at the back, tighten it up a bit, and then you're going to, first thing you're going to do is just pull the slip knot through the 2 loops and then slip stitch through to start. And from here on, we're then going to be making sure we line up each stitch. So the next 2 stitches will be the last 2 stitches of the cluster of 3. Okay, so I'm going to take my hook through the front loop of that stitch and the back loop of its partner, yarn over, pull through, and then pull this loop through this loop. Now, something I haven't mentioned, when I'm doing this seam, I've chosen to go up half a size. So I'm using 6.5 mil instead of 6. I find that that will keep the seam a bit flatter, because going through 2 sides tends to pull up a bit more. So to use a slightly bigger hook kind of counteracts that effect. But equally, don't pull your slip stitches too tight, because even if you're using a bigger hook, if you pull them too tight, then you might get that seam sort of bunching up a bit. Okay, so we've done 1, 2, and then the 3rd one of that first cluster of 3 before we reach the gap. Yarn over, pull through, pull that loop through that loop, and this is the point where you don't want to tighten it, just let it sit gently back down rather than yanking it and tightening it up. And so the next one, front loop, back loop, yarn over, pull through, and then slip stitch across. So it's simple as that. Much nicer, I think, than sewing. I'm not a big fan of sewing, and it does leave a bulkier seam if you sew it. So we can continue crocheting even though we're joining together, which is always, I think, nicer than having to get the needle out. Okay, so just carry on in this way, making sure that you're still lining up the correct stitches with one another. And then I'll show you what to do at the end of the seam. Okay, so we're coming to the end of that seam now, and I've just done my last double crochet or pair of double crochets. So I'm now looking for the chain. So I'm going to stick my hook into that first chain and then into its corresponding one on the other side. It's always a bit trickier to get your hook in the chains. Didn't want to go then. Okay, yarn over, pull through, and then pull that one through that one. Okay, and then we've reached right at the end. So we want to cut off, leaving a decent tail to sew in. And then just pull through the loop that's left on the hook. Great, so that's our back seam closed up now. Hopefully it's laying quite flat for you. So on the inside is going to look like this, so obviously quite an obvious seam. But when you look on the right side, you're going to see very nice, a flat seam because we just went through those 2 loops instead of all 4. And if you have a little bit of pull on it, you'll still see it looks quite nice, even when it opens up slightly. So I do think that that's a nicer way of making the seam. It's a prettier finish, cleaner finish. Right, so we're going to do the same thing on the sleeves. Now, it's a little bit different in that we'll be working on we want to work on the wrong side now. So we want to take our sleeves and fold them so that the cardigan's now inside out. So we've got obviously that's the correct side, the right side of the seam facing us now. And we can fold our sleeves. And then we want to do the same thing we've just done. Obviously we've got right sides together again like we had before. And we're going to make our seam again, going through the outer loop of each side. So front loop of that, back loop of that. Join your sleeve seams together. Okay, and when we've done that, I'm going to discuss making it a bit longer if you want to on the hem. So show you how we can do that. And also if you want to make your sleeve a little bit longer, what I like to do is close it up and work in the round, just so that it looks quite neat on the edges. Okay, so let's join these seams up here and then we'll have a look at lengthening if you want to.